Welcome to Jesse Livermore Trading Mindset. Kindly subscribe our channel for more inspirational videos.
Part 1. The seduction of being early. There is a moment in every trader's life when the market seems to lean forward and whisper a secret meant only for them. Jesse Livermore knew that moment well. It arrived quietly, almost politely, before the crowd noticed anything at all. A subtle tightening in price, a rhythm shift in the tape, a feeling that something was about to happen. The danger was never in the market itself. The danger was in what that moment awakened inside the trader. Livermore observed that price rarely seduces through certainty. It seduces through anticipation. Before the breakout, before confirmation, before clarity, there is possibility. And possibility is intoxicating. The mind rushes ahead of the chart, constructing futures that have not yet earned the right to exist. Profits are counted before they are made. Losses are dismissed before they are defined. The trader feels intelligent, perceptive, chosen acting early, feels like proof of superiority, as if waiting were a weakness reserved for slower minds. The body reacts before logic has time to intervene. The pulse quickens, the shoulders tighten. A quiet urgency fills the chest. If you don't act now, the market will leave without you, and being left behind feels unbearable. Livermore understood this deeply. He saw how missing a move wounded the ego more sharply than losing money. Loss could be rationalized. Missing out felt personal. So the hand reaches for the order button, not recklessly, just a small position, just enough to be involved. The justification is always elegant. You'll add later. You'll manage risk. You're simply positioning yourself early, ahead of the herd. And sometimes fate rewards this behavior. Price moves immediately. The position turns green. The trader feels validated. The brain records the experience not as luck, but as skill. This is how the trap is set. Livermore learned, through cycles of triumph and devastation, that the market is merciless in the way it trains bad habits. Early entries occasionally work just often enough to be reinforced. They create a distorted feedback loop where impatience masquerades as intuition. Over time, the trader begins to believe that hesitation is the enemy, that speed is sophistication, that anticipation is mastery. But the account tells a quieter truth. Early entries demand wider stops or tighter ones taken too soon. They invite hope into places where neutrality should exist. They shift the trader's focus from process to outcome, from probability to prediction. The mind becomes invested in being right instead of being aligned. Each tick against the position feels like a personal challenge. Each pause becomes a test of faith. The trade stops being data and becomes identity. Livermore came to recognize that being early is rarely about the market. It is about the fear of not mattering, the fear of watching opportunity unfold without you, the fear that patience will make you irrelevant. These fears push traders into positions before the market has offered evidence, before risk can be defined cleanly, before probability has tilted decisively in their favor. He learned this lesson not in theory, but in ruin. He made fortunes and lost them with equal intensity, not because his understanding of markets was flawed, but because his timing was driven by emotion rather than confirmation. Each collapse carried the same signature, acting before the market spoke clearly, forcing trades instead of allowing them to reveal themselves. Eventually, something shifted. Livermore realized that waiting was not absence of action. It was the most aggressive discipline a trader could possess. Waiting meant refusing to trade until uncertainty narrowed. It meant letting the market prove itself rather than demanding it perform. It meant surrendering the illusion of control and replacing it with alignment. He began to see the market not as a series of opportunities to be seized, but as a sequence of probabilities unfolding in their own time. His role was not to predict, but to participate only when the odds justified engagement. He stopped trying to be first. He focused on being right late, when being right actually mattered. This shift required emotional detachment, not indifference but neutrality. Livermore learned to watch price move without attaching meaning to every fluctuation. He allowed setups to mature. He let false moves exhaust themselves without commentary. He accepted that missing trades was not failure, it was a cost of discipline. The irony revealed itself slowly. By waiting, he caught larger portions of moves with less stress. His entries aligned with momentum rather than anticipation. His exits became cleaner because they were no longer fueled by fear or hope. Consistency emerged not from brilliance, but from restraint. Being early feels intelligent because it flatters the ego. Being patient feels uncomfortable because it exposes insecurity. But mastery lives on the other side of discomfort. The market does not reward urgency. It rewards alignment. It does not care who arrives first. It only pays those who arrive prepared. Livermore's enduring lesson is not that waiting guarantees success, but that impatience guarantees vulnerability. Every premature trade carries emotional weight that compounds over time. Every disciplined wait strengthens psychological capital. In the long run, accounts are not destroyed by bad analysis, but by the quiet erosion caused by acting too soon. The trader who survives learns to sit with uncertainty without trying to resolve it. They learn to let price come to them. They learn that confidence is not loud or hurried. It is silent, observant, and grounded in process. And when they finally act, it is not because they fear missing out, but because the market has spoken clearly enough that emotion is no longer required. Being early feels smart, until it becomes expensive. Waiting feels uncomfortable, until it becomes freedom. Number 1. The psychological trap of anticipation. Jesse Livermore understood something that most traders spend entire careers resisting. The market does not reward cleverness the way the ego imagines it does. It rewards alignment, and anticipation, seductive as it feels, is almost always the ego disguising itself as intelligence. The amateur trader lives in the future. Every tick is interpreted not for what it is, but for what it might become. They are not watching price. They are projecting themselves onto it. They believe trading is about seeing first, about discovering the move before anyone else notices. In their mind, the goal is not profitability but validation to call the move, to feel ahead, to prove they understand something others don't. Anticipation feels powerful because it gives the illusion of control. It creates a narrative where the trader is not reacting to the market, but shaping their destiny within it. Confirmation, by contrast, feels passive. It feels like waiting for permission, like surrendering initiative. The ego hates this. It equates patience with slowness, observation with weakness, and restraint with missed opportunity. Livermore learned, through devastating losses, that anticipation is not foresight. It is impatience dressed up as insight. When a trader anticipates, they are not trading price. They are trading a story about who they are, how smart they are, and how this time they will be early instead of late. The chart becomes secondary. The identity becomes primary. This is where most traders quietly lose their edge before they ever place the trade. Livermore famously said that the real money was never made in the anticipation, but in the sitting. That single sentence carries more psychological weight than entire libraries of technical analysis. Sitting requires emotional discipline. Sitting means doing nothing while the mind begs for action. Sitting forces the trader to confront discomfort without anesthetizing it with trades. In the early years, Livermore fired at every rustle. A sudden surge in volume, a sharp candle, a rumor floating through the air. Like a hunter who hears movement in the bushes and pulls the trigger without seeing the target, he acted on suggestion instead of confirmation. Sometimes he hit something, often he didn't, and even when he did, the cost of the misses outweighed the reward of the hits. The professional hunter knows something the amateur refuses to accept. Noise is constant, but opportunity is rare. Forests are always alive with movement. Markets are always fluctuating. If you fire at every sound, you will exhaust your ammunition long before the real target appears. Worse, you will train yourself to associate movement with meaning, randomness with signal. Most traders do exactly this. They fire at noise and call it opportunity. They mistake activity for edge. They believe that constant engagement equals progress. But Livermore discovered that restraint was not inactivity. It was precision. Waiting until the target steps fully into view changes everything. Risk becomes defined. Probability tilts. Emotion quiets. The trade no longer requires belief, only execution. When confirmation arrives, it does not shout. It simply removes doubt. And when doubt is removed, the trade stops being a test of identity and becomes a statistical decision. Anticipation traps the trader in a psychological loop. Once in early, they must now defend the position emotionally. Every adverse move feels like a challenge. Every pause feels threatening. The trader is no longer observing the market, they are negotiating with it. Hope enters the equation, so does fear. The original thesis, built on anticipation, now demands loyalty. Livermore learned that anticipation creates attachment, and attachment is poison to consistency. The professional waits not because they are unsure, but because they are precise. They understand that certainty in trading is not absolute. It is probabilistic. Confirmation does not eliminate risk, but it concentrates it. It stacks the odds enough that outcomes no longer define self-worth. Losses become acceptable costs, not personal failures. This shift, from anticipation to observation, is not technical. It is psychological. It requires the trader to release the need to be right first and replace it with the desire to be right consistently. It requires letting go of the fantasy of prediction and embracing the discipline of reaction. Livermore's greatest edge was not his market intuition, but his ability, when he finally learned it, to wait without narrating, to observe without intervening, to let the market reveal itself before committing capital. He stopped trying to impress the market with his intelligence. He allowed it to lead. In that stillness, something profound happened. The market stopped feeling adversarial. Price action became information instead of provocation. Trades emerged naturally, not urgently. He was no longer hunting shadows. He was selecting moments. The amateur trader asks, "What do I think will happen next?" The professional asks, "What is happening now, and does it justify risk?" That single distinction separates prediction from process, ego from execution, noise from signal. Anticipation promises excitement. Observation delivers consistency. And in the long arc of a trading career, excitement fades quickly, but consistency compounds into mastery. Livermore paid dearly to learn this truth, but he left it behind for those willing to listen. The market does not reward those who guess first. It rewards those who wait until the target steps into the open, and then act without hesitation, without emotion, and without the need to be right. Number 2. Why false breakouts exist. Jesse Livermore rejected the idea that markets were cruel, manipulative, or malicious. That belief, he learned, was a psychological refuge for traders who needed an enemy to justify their losses. Markets were not evil. They were efficient, and efficiency, unlike fairness, has no concern for individual comfort. False breakouts exist for one simple reason: impatience exists. Markets are ecosystems of human behavior, layered with algorithms, institutions, and capital flows that respond not to hope, but to liquidity. And liquidity is not evenly distributed. It pools where emotion pools, above obvious highs, below obvious lows, at levels where the impatient trader places their dreams of instant validation. Livermore understood that these levels were not random. They were psychological landmarks. They represented certainty in the minds of amateurs. If price breaks here, the thinking went, it must continue. The word must is where the trap is set. Markets do not move on must. They move on balance. Institutions do not hunt traders. They do not need to. Emotion leads traders to predictable behavior. Impatience compresses decision, making into obvious zones. Breakouts without confirmation are irresistible because they promise immediacy, no waiting, no doubt, just action and reward. That promise is exactly why they fail so often. A breakout without confirmation is like ice that appears frozen from the shore. It looks solid, it reflects confidence. Others are stepping onto it. The trader feels foolish, staying back while everyone else advances. But ice does not care how confident you feel. Step too early, and it cracks beneath you, not because it is deceptive, but because it was never fully formed. Livermore learned not to fear false moves. Fear implies surprise. He expected them. He built his entire psychological framework around the assumption that the market's first move was often wrong, not intentionally wrong, incomplete. A probe, a test, a search for commitment. The market asks a question before it makes a statement. When price pushes above resistance for the first time, it is asking, is there real demand here? When it dips below support, it is asking, is supply truly dominant? The impatient trader hears a statement, the professional hears a question. And answering a question too early is how traders get trapped. False breakouts are not failures of analysis. They are failures of timing and emotional discipline. They occur because traders confuse movement with acceptance. A level is not broken because price touched it. It is broken when price can stay there, build there, and attract participation beyond initial excitement. Livermore observed that the public always rushed to act on the first sign of resolution. They needed closure. They needed certainty. They needed the discomfort of waiting to end. The market exploits this not through deception, but through neutrality. It simply moves to where orders are clustered, absorbs them, and reassesses. This is why false breakouts feel personal. The trader believed the story. They committed emotionally before the market committed structurally. When price snaps back, it feels like betrayal. In reality, nothing was promised. Livermore's mindset shift came when he stopped interpreting false breakouts as tricks and started seeing them as information. A failed move revealed weakness. A rejection exposed imbalance. Every false breakout removed emotional participants from the field and transferred risk to those capable of holding it. He learned to wait for proof, not in the sense of certainty, but in the sense of participation volume that sustains, pullbacks that hold, price that accepts its new territory instead of fleeing it. Confirmation was not about safety. It was about alignment with dominant forces rather than temporary enthusiasm. Most traders lose money on false breakouts because they are emotionally over-leveraged before they are statistically aligned. They enter with hope instead of expectancy. They need the breakout to work immediately because they are not prepared to sit with ambiguity. When it doesn't, panic replaces patience. Livermore accepted randomness as a permanent feature of markets. He understood that any single breakout attempt was just one data point in a distribution of outcomes. Some would work, many would not. His edge came not from predicting which attempt would succeed, but from positioning himself only when the market had revealed enough information to tilt expectancy in his favor. The market's first move is often a lie, not because it intends to deceive, but because truth takes time to develop. Trends are not born fully formed. They are negotiated into existence through failed attempts, shakeouts, and emotional cleansing. False breakouts are part of that negotiation. When a trader stops taking them personally, something changes. Losses shrink. Patience grows. Observation replaces urgency. The trader no longer needs to be right at the moment of emergence. They are content to participate after survival has been proven. Livermore's great realization was this: markets reward those who let others be wrong first. Every false breakout removes weak hands, clarifies intent, and strengthens the eventual move. By waiting, he was not missing opportunity mature. Efficiency demands that easy money be rare. If breakouts worked cleanly every time, they would cease to exist as edges. False breakouts are the market's way of separating emotional capital from disciplined capital. They are not obstacles to mastery, they are prerequisites. Once the trader understands this, impatience loses its authority. The need for immediate resolution fades, and in that psychological quiet, the market stops feeling hostile and starts feeling legible, not predictable, not controllable, but understandable, if you wait long enough to listen. Number 3. What confirmation really means. Jesse Livermore eventually understood that confirmation was one of the most misunderstood concepts in trading. Not because it was complex, but because it was psychologically inconvenient. Traders spoke about confirmation as if it were a technical checkbox, a signal layered on top of another signal, a final permission slip to enter a trade. But Livermore knew better. Confirmation was not about certainty. It was about alignment. And alignment changes the trader far more than it changes the chart. Certainty is an illusion the mind craves. It wants guarantees. Outcomes promised in advance. Protection from randomness. Confirmation offers none of that. What it offers instead is coherence. Price begins to move in one direction and stays there long enough to suggest intent rather than impulse. Volume participates, not explosively, but persistently, as if capital is committing, rather than speculating. Time passes, and price does not immediately reject its progress. These elements don't remove risk, but they transform its character. Livermore learned that when confirmation appears, something subtle happens internally. The urgency that once screamed for action begins to soften. The trade no longer feels like a race. It feels like a decision. The need for the trade to work immediately dissolves, replaced by a quiet confidence in process. This emotional shift is not accidental. It is diagnostic. When a trader still feels rushed, they are early. When they feel calm, they are aligned. Confirmation quiets the emotional noise because it reduces the psychological burden of the trade. The trader is no longer fighting the market for validation. They are responding to what the market has already demonstrated. This distinction is critical. Anticipation demands belief. Confirmation requires observation. Livermore never cared about catching the exact bottom or selling the precise top. Those goals belonged to storytellers, not professionals. He understood that trying to capture extremes was an ego-driven exercise disguised as skill. Extremes are visible only in hindsight. What mattered was direction with evidence. A market that had chosen a path and was willing to defend it. He waited not because he lacked conviction, but because conviction without evidence is just faith. And faith has no place in probabilistic environments. Price confirming meant more than movement. It meant acceptance, a breakout that held, a pullback that respected structure, a failure to reverse despite opportunity. Volume confirming meant participation beyond retail enthusiasm, capital that lingered, absorbed pressure, and continued forward. Time confirming meant survival. The longer price remained aligned with the thesis, the less likely it was to be noise. But the most important confirmation was internal. Livermore paid close attention to his emotional state because he knew the market would not protect him from himself. When a trade felt urgent, when he felt compelled to act immediately or risk missing out, he knew he was operating from fear. When he needed the trade to succeed to feel justified, he knew ego was involved. Those trades rarely ended well. When confirmation was real, the trade felt strangely ordinary. There was no rush of adrenaline, no internal monologue demanding action. The decision emerged naturally, almost quietly. The trade did not feel like a test of intelligence or courage. It felt like execution. Professionals do not trade excitement. Excitement is a sign that emotion has entered the system. They trade validation. Validation not in the sense of personal affirmation, but in the sense that the market has validated a hypothesis through behavior, not promise. This is why confirmation is often mistaken for hesitation by inexperienced traders. From the outside, waiting looks passive. In reality, it is active restraint. It is the discipline of allowing information to accumulate before committing capital. It is the refusal to assign meaning to incomplete data. Livermore learned that confirmation does not come from a single candle or signal. It emerges from agreement across dimensions, price, volume, time, and internal state. When these elements align, the trade no longer feels fragile. Losses are still possible, but they are no longer threatening. They are expenses, not verdicts. This shift is profound. When a trader no longer needs the trade to work, they paradoxically trade better. Stops are respected because they are not emotionally negotiated. Targets are allowed to develop because there is no desperation to extract profit immediately. The trader is present, not pleading. Confirmation removes the illusion of control and replaces it with cooperation. The trader is no longer trying to impose a narrative on the market. They are participating in one that has already begun. This is why confirmation does not eliminate risk, but it transforms anxiety into acceptance. Livermore's greatest trades were not the ones where he felt smartest. They were the ones where he felt least involved emotionally, where the market did the heavy lifting, and he simply stayed aligned. He learned to trust not his predictions, but his process in that process. Confirmation was not a delay, it was a filter. It eliminated trades that required hope to survive. It selected trades that could breathe. It reduced the frequency of action but increased the quality of outcomes. Most traders ask, "Is this enough confirmation?" Livermore asked, "Is this enough alignment for me to act without urgency?" That question changes everything. When confirmation is real, the trade no longer feels like a gamble on the future. It feels like participation in the present. And in that state, consistency stops being something the trader chases and becomes something that naturally emerges. Not because the market is predictable, but because the trader is finally aligned with how uncertainty actually works. Number 4, detaching from outcomes. Jesse Livermore came to understand a paradox that dismantles most traders long before they recognize it. The more you care about being right, the worse your results become. Not immediately, not obviously, but quietly, persistently, and with mathematical inevitability. Caring too much about outcomes does not sharpen performance, it contaminates it. At first, the desire to be right feels noble. It feels disciplined. It feels like accountability. But beneath it lives something far more dangerous. Attachment to prediction, attachment to identity. Attachment to the idea that a trade must validate the trader rather than simply express a probability. Livermore learned this lesson through repetition and pain. He saw that every time he emotionally leaned into an opinion, the market had leverage over him. Once attached, he could no longer see clearly. He negotiated stops. He rationalized weakness. He interpreted neutral price action as betrayal. The trade stopped being a position and became a personal argument with reality. Waiting for confirmation changed this dynamic in a profound way. It forced detachment before entry ever occurred. When the trader waits, they are not attempting to control the future. They are responding to what already is. This shift seems subtle, but it rewires the entire psychological framework of trading. Control is the illusion that destroys traders, the belief that insight can command outcomes, that intelligence can bend probability, that wanting something badly enough somehow increases its likelihood. Markets punish this belief relentlessly. Not out of cruelty, but out of indifference. Livermore learned to divorce his opinions quickly. He did not abandon analysis, but he refused to fall in love with it. Opinions were provisional. Hypotheses were temporary. If the market failed to confirm them, they were discarded without mourning. This emotional agility became one of his greatest strengths. A confirmed trade, he understood, was not a promise. It was a probability advantage. Nothing more. Nothing less. And probability only rewards traders who can remain emotionally neutral across sequences of outcomes, not individual trades. Sequences, this is where most traders fail. They trade as if each position must succeed, as if every trade carries moral weight, as if a loss means something about them. But probability does not operate on feelings. It operates on frequency, expectancy, and consistency of execution. A single trade is meaningless. 100 trades executed with emotional neutrality is everything. Detachment does not mean apathy. It means clarity. It means the trader accepts that outcomes are uncontrollable, while execution is not. When this acceptance becomes genuine, not intellectual, but emotional, the trader stops trying to extract certainty from uncertainty. Livermore noticed a transformation when he stopped needing to be right. Losses no longer triggered anger. Wins no longer triggered euphoria. Both became information. The emotional spikes flattened. And in that flattening, something remarkable happened. His decision-making improved. He exited losers faster because there was no ego to defend. He let winners run longer because there was no fear of losing paper profits. He followed his plan because he was no longer negotiating with himself. Detachment is not something a trader declares. It is something they earn through repeated surrender to probability. Waiting for confirmation is one of the most effective teachers of this surrender because it delays gratification and weakens attachment before risk is ever assumed. When a trader enters early, they enter emotionally invested. They need the trade to work because they acted on belief. When a trader enters after confirmation, they enter statistically invested. They want the trade to work, but they do not need it to. That difference determines everything. Livermore learned that emotional neutrality is not coldness. It is stability. It is the internal state where outcomes no longer dictate behavior, where losses are anticipated expenses and wins are not trophies, where the trader's identity is rooted in process, not performance. You do not need certainty to trade well. Certainty does not exist in markets. What you need is consistency. Consistency of execution, consistency of risk, consistency of mindset, and consistency is impossible when the trader is emotionally entangled with outcomes. The market does not respond to hope. It does not punish fear. It simply unfolds. Traders suffer not because of randomness, but because they resist it. Detachment is the moment that resistance ends. Livermore's greatest edge was not his ability to see opportunity, but his ability to let go when opportunity did not behave as expected. He trusted his process enough to survive being wrong repeatedly, without losing alignment. That is mastery. When a trader truly detaches from outcomes, they stop asking, "Will this trade work?" They start asking, "Did I execute correctly?" And when execution becomes the measure of success, results take care of themselves. Not immediately, not perfectly, but consistently. You don't need certainty. You need the emotional strength to trade probabilities without flinching. That strength is not built by predicting the future. It is built by releasing the need to control it. Number 5, patience is a profit filter. Most traders misunderstand patience because they confuse it with inactivity. Jesse Livermore never did. He learned the hard way that patience in markets is not passive, it is selective aggression. It is the deliberate refusal to expend capital, emotional or financial, until the conditions justify force. Early in his career, Livermore traded often. He felt the pull to participate constantly, as if the market demanded his presence to reward him. Every fluctuation looked like opportunity. Every quiet period felt like danger. He believed success came from engagement. Over time, the market taught him the opposite lesson. Patience was not about waiting endlessly. It was about choosing precisely when to stop waiting. Every trade you do not take performs an invisible service. It preserves capital. Yes, but more importantly, it preserves psychological clarity. Each avoided impulse prevents emotional debt from accumulating. Traders rarely collapse from one catastrophic decision. They erode slowly, decision by decision, trade by trade, through fatigue, overexposure, and subtle loss of discipline. Livermore discovered that patience functioned as a filter, a ruthless one. Think of confirmation, not as a green light, but as a gate. Most trades never make it through. They look promising at first glance, but fall apart under scrutiny. The setup lacks follow-through, volume fades, structure weakens, or the trader's emotions are too loud. The filter rejects them all. And that rejection is not failure. It is the edge. The market offers far more opportunities than a trader can responsibly take. Most of them are noise disguised as possibility. Without a filter, the trader becomes reactive, constantly responding to stimuli, rather than selecting moments. With a filter, activity drops, but quality rises. This is where patience becomes aggressive. It aggressively removes marginal trades. It aggressively protects focus. It aggressively limits exposure to randomness. Livermore realized that the fewer decisions he made, the better those decisions became. Decision making is a finite resource. Each impulsive trade drains it. Each unnecessary position adds cognitive load. Over time, even strong strategies collapse under the weight of too many choices. Most traders do not fail because their strategies are flawed. They fail because they make too many decisions, too many entries, too many adjustments, too many emotional negotiations. They confuse activity with progress and motion with mastery. Livermore's trading frequency declined as his wealth increased. That was not coincidence. It was evolution. As his understanding deepened, he no longer felt compelled to extract profit from every market movement. He waited for conditions that aligned clearly with his edge. He allowed boredom to exist without trying to solve it with trades. He accepted that most days did not require his involvement. Patience refined his identity. He stopped thinking like someone who needed the market. He started thinking like someone the market had to impress. This shift changes how charts are seen. Levels become less urgent. Setups feel optional rather than mandatory. The trader no longer scans for reasons to enter, but for reasons to stay out. And paradoxically, this restraint makes the eventual trades feel obvious. If this idea is already altering how you look at price, if you're noticing how many trades fail to earn confirmation, pause for a moment, acknowledge that shift, even small changes in perception compound over time. If this perspective resonates, engaging with it reinforces its importance. Signals matter, whether in markets or algorithms. A simple like tells the system that this kind of thinking deserves more attention. But beyond platforms and metrics, the real reinforcement happens internally. When a trader begins to value patience as protection rather than delay, their entire relationship with trading changes. Losses feel smaller because they occur less frequently. Wins feel cleaner because they emerge from clarity rather than impulse. The emotional volatility flattens. Livermore learned that patience does not eliminate risk. It concentrates it. Instead of spreading risk across dozens of mediocre decisions, he focused it into a few high-quality ones. This concentration increased expectancy and reduced psychological noise. The market does not reward effort. It rewards selectivity. Every trade you skip, because it lacks confirmation, strengthens your discipline. Every moment you wait while others chase reinforces your independence. Over time, patience stops feeling like restraint and starts feeling like power. Livermore's greatness was not built on constant action. It was built on deliberate restraint. He understood that money was not made by being present in the market, but by being aligned with it. Patience is not waiting for opportunity. It is filtering until opportunity remains. And when only the best trades survive that filter, consistency stops being something you chase and becomes something you protect. Number 6, the discipline to do nothing, Jesse. Livermore believed that the most difficult skill in trading had nothing to do with analysis, timing, or execution. It was the discipline to do nothing, not laziness, not avoidance, but conscious, deliberate inaction while opportunity gestates. He learned that doing nothing, when done correctly, required more strength than pulling the trigger. The market is never silent. Even when price is still, the mind is not. Thoughts multiply. Scenarios unfold. What ifs creep in, the trader's hands itch, not because there is opportunity, but because there is uncertainty, and uncertainty feels like a problem that demands resolution. Most traders resolve it with action. Silence feels uncomfortable because it removes distraction. When there is no trade to manage, the trader is left alone with their impulses. They become aware of how badly they want to participate, how deeply they equate activity with purpose. The urge to trade is rarely about the setup. It is about relief. Livermore recognized that the inability to sit was not a technical flaw. It was a psychological one. Traders feared stillness because stillness exposed impatience, insecurity, and doubt. A trade, even a bad one, felt better than waiting because it restored a sense of control. But control in trading is an illusion. Doing nothing is where discipline is forged, because it forces the trader to experience discomfort without escaping it. Every moment spent waiting trains emotional tolerance. Every resisted impulse strengthens restraint. Over time, the trader's nervous system recalibrates. The market no longer feels like something that must be acted upon immediately. It becomes something to be observed. Livermore said money is made by sitting, not by trading, because sitting allows the market to do the work. Trading too early transfers that burden onto the trader. They must now defend a position emotionally, manage uncertainty actively, and absorb noise. Sitting allows clarity to emerge without cost. Most traders never learn how to sit because they never learn to trust confirmation. They either act before it appears or hesitate when it finally arrives. In both cases, fear is in control. Fear of missing out. Fear of being wrong. Fear of committing. Livermore learned that the discipline to do nothing sharpened his ability to act decisively when the time came. Because he had conserved his attention and emotional energy, execution became clean. There was no second guessing, no hesitation. He had waited long enough that the trade no longer required courage, only compliance with his rules. The paradox is this: the trader who cannot sit will also struggle to trust confirmation. They are so accustomed to acting on impulse that even validated setups feel uncomfortable. Stillness has trained them to seek stimulation, not alignment. When confirmation appears, they doubt it, not because it is weak, but because patience is unfamiliar. This is why discipline is not built in moments of action. It is built in moments of restraint. If you're finding value in this way of thinking, it may be worth staying close to it. This approach is not about finding more trades. It's about rewiring how traders relate to uncertainty, boredom, and restraint. Subscribing is not about signals or strategies. It's about reinforcing a mindset that most traders never fully develop. And take a moment to reflect: what is harder for you? Waiting while nothing happens, or trusting confirmation when it finally appears? That question reveals more about your trading than any indicator ever will. Dropping a comment forces honesty, and honesty is where growth begins. Livermore's greatness did not come from constant brilliance. It came from selective participation. He accepted that most market movement did not require his involvement. He waited while others chased. He sat while others reacted, and when the market finally aligned, he acted without emotion. The discipline to do nothing is not about suppressing desire. It is about understanding it. It is about recognizing that the urge to trade is often the urge to escape uncertainty, not the presence of opportunity. When a trader learns to sit comfortably in uncertainty, everything changes. The market loses its urgency. Charts feel quieter. Decisions feel simpler. The trader stops asking, "What can I trade right now?" and starts asking, "Is there anything worth trading at all?" Most days, the honest answer is no. And that answer, when accepted without frustration, becomes a competitive advantage. Livermore mastered the art of sitting because he understood that patience was not empty time. It was preparation. It was alignment. It was the space where emotional noise faded and probability became visible. Most traders never learn how to sit. The few who do discover that stillness is not the absence of progress. It is where mastery quietly forms. Number 7. The professional mindset shift. The final shift Jesse Livermore made was not technical. It was philosophical. It did not change what he saw on the chart. It changed how he related to uncertainty itself. This was the shift that separated survival from mastery, speculation from professionalism. Amateurs ask a question that seems reasonable on the surface. Will this trade work? It feels logical, practical, necessary. But hidden inside that question is fear. Fear of loss. Fear of being wrong. Fear that randomness might assert itself at the wrong moment. The amateur is seeking reassurance before risk, certainty before commitment. Professionals ask a different question entirely. Has the market earned my risk? That question changes the balance of power. It places the burden not on prediction, but on evidence. It removes the trader from the role of hopeful participant and places them in the role of selective allocator. Risk is no longer something given freely to ideas. It is something granted reluctantly to behavior. Livermore understood that confirmation was not an expression of fear. It was an expression of respect for uncertainty, for probability, and for the limits of human control. The market does not owe clarity. It does not owe follow through. It does not owe fairness. Waiting for confirmation was his way of acknowledging this reality without resentment. When a trader waits, something subtle but profound occurs. They stop fighting randomness. They stop trying to bend outcomes toward desire. They stop negotiating with the future. Instead, They anchor themselves in the present. What price is doing, not what they want it to do. This is where trading begins to change texture before the shift. Trading feels like gambling because the trader is emotionally invested in outcomes they cannot control. Each trade feels like a roll of the dice, weighted with hope or dread. Wins bring relief, losses bring frustration. The emotional cycle never stabilizes. After the shift, trading feels inevitable, not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because execution is aligned. The trader no longer feels like they are guessing, they are responding. They are no longer forcing participation, they are allowing it. Livermore reached a point where trades no longer felt dramatic. There was no internal struggle before entry, no adrenaline surge after. The market had already done the arguing. His role was simply to accept or decline, and most of the time, he declined. This is the part most traders resist. They believe success comes from more trades, more activity, more chances to be right. Livermore learned that success came from fewer decisions made at better moments. Timing replaced frequency. Selectivity replaced enthusiasm. Patience replaced prediction. He did not need to outsmart the market. He needed to stop interfering with it. When confirmation became his standard, losses stopped feeling like surprises. They were expected statistical events. Wins stopped feeling like victories. They were outcomes of alignment. The emotional volatility flattened, not because he cared less, but because he understood more. The professional mindset is not built on confidence in outcomes. It is built on confidence in process. The trader trusts that if they consistently wait for the market to earn their risk, expectancy will take care of itself over time. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but reliably. This mindset accepts that randomness never disappears. It simply becomes less threatening. When a trader no longer fights randomness, they stop taking losses personally. They stop needing the next trade to redeem the last one. Each trade stands alone, stripped of emotional meaning. Livermore's final lesson was simple but unforgiving. Consistency is not the result of prediction. It is the result of psychological alignment. When the trader's expectations align with how markets actually behave, frustration fades. When frustration fades, discipline strengthens. When discipline strengthens, results stabilize. You don't need more trades. You don't need faster execution. You don't need better indicators. You need better timing. Not just on the chart, but within yourself, timing that knows when to wait. Timing that knows when evidence is sufficient. Timing that knows when uncertainty has narrowed enough to justify risk. When a trader makes this shift, trading stops feeling like a struggle against the market. It becomes a collaboration with probability. The market leads, the trader follows. And in that relationship, something rare emerges. Calm Livermore spent a lifetime learning what most traders never fully accept. That mastery is not about control. It is about surrendering the need for it. When you let the market come to you, you stop chasing. When you stop chasing, you stop bleeding energy. And when energy is conserved, clarity appears. That clarity is the professional edge, not prediction, not excitement, not certainty alignment. And once alignment becomes your standard, trading no longer feels like a series of guesses. It feels like a process unfolding patiently, probabilistically, and inevitably over time. Part 8, Final Thought, and next video recommendation. Waiting for confirmation will never make you feel impressive. It will not feed the ego. It will not give you stories to tell about how early you were, or how you saw it coming. In fact, it often feels like the opposite. It feels quiet, unspectacular, almost invisible. But it does something far more important. It makes you calm. And calm traders survive long enough to win. Jesse Livermore learned this lesson in the most expensive way possible. He lost fortunes when he ignored it, not because he lacked intelligence, but because he abandoned restraint. Each time he convinced himself that speed was an edge, that conviction could substitute for confirmation. The market eventually corrected him harshly, repeatedly. And yet, each time he rebuilt, it was because he returned to the same truth. The market does not reward urgency. It rewards alignment. Livermore's collapses were never sudden. They began quietly with small violations of patience, acting a little too early, holding a little too tightly to an opinion, needing to be right instead of needing to be disciplined. Those small psychological shifts compounded until restraint disappeared entirely, and without restraint, even brilliance becomes dangerous. When he remembered the lesson, when he returned to waiting, to sitting, to allowing the market to prove itself, his trading changed character, the chaos faded, the emotional spikes softened. The account stabilized not because he predicted better, but because he interfered less. This is the part most traders misunderstand. Your edge is not speed. Speed is available to everyone. Now, algorithms, institutions, amateurs clicking faster than they can think. Speed does not differentiate. It commoditizes. Restraint differentiates. Restraint is rare because it is uncomfortable. It denies the ego. It forces you to watch moves you didn't participate in without justifying yourself. It requires you to accept that many opportunities are not yours to take, and that acceptance reshapes you. Patience doesn't just protect your capital, it rewires your identity. Over time, the trader who waits begins to trust silence. They stop interpreting stillness as failure. They no longer feel obligated to act simply because the market is open. They understand that not trading is often the most profitable position. This is when trading stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like a craft. Calm traders don't panic into positions. Calm traders don't chase validation. Calm traders don't need the next trade to fix the last one. They operate from process, not pressure. Livermore's enduring legacy is not that he made and lost fortunes. Many traders have done that. His legacy is that he articulated, through pain, reflection, and ruthless honesty. That mastery is psychological before it is technical. That consistency emerges when the trader aligns with uncertainty instead of resisting it. Waiting for confirmation will not make you feel smart in the moment. It may even make you feel late. But over time, it makes you stable. And stability is what allows skill to compound. If this perspective resonated, if it shifted how you think about patience, confirmation, and restraint, the next lesson builds directly on this foundation. Why Livermore never averaged down and why you shouldn't either. That idea completes this one. Because waiting is not just about entries. It's about how you respond when you're wrong. It's about refusing to negotiate with loss. It's about respecting probability even when your ego wants to intervene together. These lessons form a single philosophy. You don't survive markets by being aggressive. You survive them by being aligned. Patience doesn't just save you money. It changes how you see risk. It changes how you experience uncertainty. And eventually, it changes who you are as a trader. That is the real edge Jesse Livermore left behind. Not a strategy to copy, but a mindset to grow into. And once that mindset takes root, trading no longer feels like something you chase. It feels like something you wait for, calmly, selectively, and with quiet confidence, until it earns you.